Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of SFA, Sacred Femme Alchemy Podcast within the Shakti Soul Sessions series. Another episode. I am realizing that doing daily was really hard, and so forgive me, I'm sticking to every other day type of podcast episode, which I think is still good enough. It's a lot of content for you all. It's a lot. It's a lot. And yesterday there was just some personal things that I have been going through, I've been attending to, and so I was unable to create a podcast. But luckily I have a short break in between meetings right now, and I'm recording this on my lunch break. So today I want to get right into it and talk about a certain time when I felt I was too afraid to fully express my needs. And I remember just feeling as if I was way too needy if I actually shared what I really wanted to share with the people that I dated. And so I'm going to get into that today and kind of just share about my experience, what happened, how I was able to overcome that, and just truly date from a place of just radical authenticity and unleashing my wild, true self. Okay. And so I'm not going to go specifics into the people that I dated. This is just like an amalgam of experiences that happened. And, I talk a lot about trying to heal your family wounds in order to attract that healthy, secure, loving, next level relationship in your life. And when I think back, and I just had so many tower moments this past weekend. I'm sure you all felt the full moon in Taurus on Friday. It was intense. It was intense for me. It was intense for other people that I connected to after the energy. And it seems like the consensus is that a lot of people went through it. And I feel like a certain part of the puzzle in my healing journey was finally revealed to me that just overthrows everything that I thought that I stood for, believed in, and just the foundation that I just felt really self-righteous about. And this is me sharing as much as I want to share. I'm still processing what had happened and what transpired. And it'll come up in little bits and pieces of what I want to reveal in my content, but I am processing it. And it just always reminds me that what it comes down to is really learning to heal our family wounds, right? Whether it's connecting to our father, which is our inner masculine, connecting to our mother, which is also known as our inner mother, and our sister, which is, it could be siblings, could be close cousins, could be really close girlfriends you had growing up, and how just that plays an influence in how you show up in all of your relationships, especially when it comes to romantic partners, which can be the biggest blockers to why you're not attracting love in the first place. And for me, growing up in an environment where I felt like I couldn't really share what was coming up. It was often about walking on eggshells and trying to appease other people. That's where people pleasing stemmed from, just so I could feel safe, right? Energetically and physically, and just feel safe in being able to express myself. And it was definitely stunted. I felt a lot of emotional repression. And it's interesting because when I work with clients one-on-one, what I typically find is that they also come from immigrant families, and they tend to be second generation living in America. And so it almost seems as if there are these overlapping themes that I come across when it comes to people who live with immigrant parents, and just the certain dynamics and cultural influences of how we are brought up in the world, and how it can be a little bit challenging and cumbersome to navigate this American way of living and being, where other people just don't have the same cultural norms as you, or societal norms essentially. And and it becomes really much like this hard challenge to show up in relationships and be able to express what it is that you want. Because one, you're inundated by all the books, all the people, and it's just, you can't be too interested in them. You have to have this black cat, golden retriever type of energy where you just act so aloof and mysterious. And maybe that's not actually you. Maybe you happen to be the golden retriever. And there's all this tantra stuff about, you need that polarity. And it's just all of this information that you can find on the internet to help you realize, I don't know, I feel like I'm going to be on a rant today. I was like, just don't get me started on all this neo-tantra bullshit about how to actually attract a man, because it's not even about that when it comes to true traditional tantra, which is, it includes sexuality, but it's in a spiritual lens, spiritual sense. Okay. Anyways, and so there comes this idea where it's just really hard to express who you are. And like I said, there's so much information out there, and it's like, how do we actually bring our whole selves to the table without feeling like we're going to be rejected, or just having that fear of rejection? And when you're going to be new in applying these different types of, ways of being, it's going to be really difficult because you're unlearning and deconditioning from all the ways that you were taught to be. And these were things that you did probably just to feel safe, or probably just to feel loved. It's okay if I actually don't state anything. If I don't bring attention to me, then I won't appear too needy. I won't be too much. I won't feel like a burden to someone else. And we bring that into our relationships, especially romantic ones, right? We don't know how to communicate to our partner if we're in relationship, or if we're not in relationship. Hey, I actually need space right now, or I can't really talk right now, because we're afraid that it's going to offend them and make them leave, essentially. When really it's just about inviting them to have this open conversation of where you're at. And so it's always so important to have this radical transparency around what is coming up for you. What is like the emotional temperature that you're bringing into the relationship? And it's just this new muscle that you're going to have to learn to practice. And it takes time, and it's not going to be something that comes easy. Anytime that something is new to you, what the brain perceives it as is probably overwhelmed and wanting to shut down and not do it. Like, for example, I am writing content in a very different way, and it takes me a long ass time compared to when I used to write content before. But I know that the more that I do it, it will be ingrained in my psyche and being able to do it. So for example, when I think about all the 40-day like Kundalini Kriya sadhanas that I do, the reason why we do it is because we're learning to break a new habit for 40 days. And in 90 days, we're learning to create a new habit. 120 days is when it's actually ingrained in your psyche. 1,000 days, it's when it's something that's actually mastered. And so it's about that constant repetition of doing it to the point where you have that neutral response to it and realize, okay, it's part of who I am. It's part of who I am to show up and tell someone what is going on with me. And when I was able to think, okay, I remember I was dating someone and I hadn't heard from him from a while. It's like typical push-pull type of relationship type of thing. Just the norm, the regular. They kind of ghost you for a little bit. I'm laughing at it now because I think it's funny, but it was not funny before. Trust me, I was like a hot mess crying in the shower and like feeling all my abandonment issues and oh my God, they disappeared. But I feel so much love for that little girl inside me because I just knew that it was coming from a really wounded place. It was coming from my maiden place, right? That unmature woman, that little girl that was inside of me that was seeking affection from people that were unavailable. That's what I call my maiden wounds. And what I really had to do was connect to that higher self, connect to my inner mother and learn to say, hey, I understand that you're being triggered right now. I understand that something's coming up for you right now, but can you express to this person that you're dating that it really bothers you when you don't hear from them? And I thought that if I told them that they would just get really irritated that I am forcing them to check in with me. That's like the actual story that was going in my head if I told someone my needs. And then I would assume that they would think I was like too needy and becoming this like patronizing potential partner and just dump me. That's where my mind went when there was no freaking evidence that was going to happen at all. I just resort to the worst case scenario, like fatalistic thinking of it being that way. And so when I was able to work with my inner mother, she was tending to my inner maiden and just really understanding and kind of unraveling and learning about all of these, issues that were coming up for me from my upbringing, my childhood, I realized, okay, this is what's going on. I was able to take space and I was able to contact him from a place where I felt emotionally regulated. I don't suggest contacting people when you're really upset, really angry, any type of emotionally like charged experience you're having. It's just discuss when you are neutral or discuss when you're not as heightened. We do the best we can, right? And I shared it and, I felt really proud of myself. It was awkward. I was so nervous. I don't even think I took a breath when I was sharing it. And, I prefaced it with this, I normally don't do this. This is something that I'm uncomfortable doing, but I'm learning to communicate with more transparency. And he took it really well. And when I prefaced the conversation with that, it kind of just took, because if you just say, I need to talk to you, they automatically assume that it's something bad. Oh my God. If a principal calls you to their office when you're young, you're thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to be in trouble? Just say, oh, I'd love to have a conversation with you and see how you're doing, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, but yeah, so I preface that conversation with that. This is normally something I don't do. It's actually really hard for me, but I really want to be transparent in my communications, especially when it comes to dating. And I expressed how I felt. I was like, hey, I didn't hear from you for a while. It made me really sad. It actually made me think that that you weren't interested in anymore. And I just wanted to get clarity from you because I do love hearing from you. And just giving them the opportunity to have space to express themselves of where their head's at. And then that's when you can go in and have the conversation of what your communication preferences are. Do you like hearing from them daily? Do you like, getting text messages from them? Do you like being able to connect on the phone at least once a day? Or, whatever it is, as you're trying to figure out how you're dating each other so that you can develop the relationship based on from a place of being able to express what it is that you want, and also being able to share with it and just of letting them know as opposed to demands, right? Oftentimes we come off with this self-righteousness saying, oh, if I demand you treat me this way, or I demand you do this. Think about you starting a new job, right? And you're finding your groove with your new boss and you're figuring out communication styles, leadership styles, that is dating in the workplace. That's how it shows up. And if you can apply that to dating in the actual dating life and your romantic life, it becomes this opportunity to look at it as we're figuring this out together to see if it's going to work. If we're going from temp job, contractor job to full-time employment, that's the best way to look at it. To have it be just this loose garment where you're not so attached to this is the only person that I'm going to date, but then also knowing that, okay, there's other opportunities out there. And so that is the thing that I kept trying to practice in my dating. And of course, there were a lot of different, challenges that I had of actually believing that I could actually say what it was that I needed to say and not have them leave. And if anything, I realized that being able to share my voice, share honestly, it actually gave me clues of whether or not they wanted to be with me. There were no games, there's no BS, there's no calling up, my girlfriends to decode their specific behavior. And it just prevented that wasted time. And when I would, that conversation after I shared it with the guy that I was dating, he told me that I was a breath of fresh air. And that's something that I never ever thought would happen because we both weren't hiding behind the relationship patterns that we were so used to, that I wanted to go in it differently. I didn't want to have the same outcome of every single person that I dated, that I wanted to have something different. And so I had to act different. You can't just do the same thing. You're going to get the same result. You have to act different. You have to do different things in order to get a different result. And that's the hardest part, is that sometimes we have to take a line action before we actually get the thing. And that's where the work comes from. That's where the inner work comes from. That's where the outer work comes from. And, it was beautiful to see that even though it didn't end up, we didn't end up together, it's beautiful to see that we could allow each other to have this expansive viewpoint of what a relationship could be when you talk to someone. And so I think of it as conscious dating, of just practicing how to have a conversation with someone. Because you think about it, the more practice you have, the better you get at it. And then so when that person does come in your life, you're like, oh, okay, I can communicate with this and not be afraid if they're going to leave. I can do this. And it's like riding a bike. The more you practice riding your bike, the less afraid you are going to be riding it. And then you can take off the training wheels. It won't be perfect the first time you ride it, but it's totally fine. And so maybe you're thinking, okay, that's too scary for me. Sharing my needs, all of that things. But the beauty is the more you start to do it, the prouder you are. And then the prouder you are, you become of yourself. That's where the esteemable acts come from. And that's where self-love comes from. And that's where the self-worth starts to raise and be like, oh my gosh, I know how to do that. And when you come into contact with people that don't know how to communicate with you in a very healthy, loving, transparent way, you're going to see that and not be attracted to that because they're not going to be able to meet you where you are. And so if you want that high, I don't even want to say high level because I don't like it when people say, oh, I'm a high level, high worth woman, or I'm a high level man. Like, let's just call it what it is, of like our true selves showing up authentically without any agenda, without any of that BS when it comes to dating. But just being real and transparent and just see, okay, can I be that partner that I am seeking? Can I just bring who I actually am in this relationship because I want honesty and I'm going to act with honesty. And so that is where the healthy, the loving, the next level relationships are built from, that foundation of honesty. And when you're able to do that, when you're able to just unleash and unlock that true self of yours without the mask, without pretending to be so many different things, that's when you can actually meet and have an intimate relationship with someone, because you're connecting soul to soul. Not fake mask, fake character to the other person. Because eventually that's not intimacy. Intimacy is into me, seeing into your soul, seeing into what it is that you like. Obviously, it stems from learning to know, what your soul is, but it takes time. It takes time. And that's the work that we do inside my one-on-one coaching. We look at what are the family wounds that are coming up for us in the relationship that we want, that are blocking us from attracting that healthy, secure, loving relationship that we truly desire. And so if you're interested, I have 3 spots open for one-on-one. Would love to work with you, would love to connect. I'll leave the link to book a sales call with me to understand what it's like to work with me in this 4-month beautiful transformative container. But looking forward to talking with you all. Sat Nam.